and welcome to Mississauga Votes. I'm Shannon Martin. We are so happy you're here with us. It is a pivotal moment for the growing city. Polls have just closed all day. Residents have been casting ballots for a new mayor. For years, Ontario's third largest city was synonymous with the late Hazel McCallion, then Bonnie Crombie. But you'll remember last year, Crombie shifted gears, making the leap to provincial politics as the leader of Ontario's Liberal Party, leaving Mississauga's top job open and up for grabs. The big issues: the housing crisis, affordability, transit expansion, crime, to name a few. We have got a lot to cover tonight. There are 20 candidates on the ballot, and we've got reporters standing by live for us at a few of the leading candidates' election night parties, ready to bring us all the excitement and insight. Clara Pasika is at Carolyn Parrish's headquarters. Now, she was the councillor for Ward 5, but gave up that seat when she announced her bid to run for mayor. Dale Manukduk is with Dipika Damerla. She's the councillor for Ward 7, which includes Cooksville. And Nav Nanwa is with Alvin Tedjo, the councillor for Ward 2, which includes Lorne Park and Clarkson. Also here with us tonight is Kelda Hune. She's down in the newsroom. She's tracking results for us. Hey, Kelda.
Hey, Shannon. Well, yeah, it's only been a few minutes since polls closed, and the votes, they are already being counted. CBC's Decision Desk will be watching those numbers very closely, and I will be updating you throughout the show on how all the candidates are doing. And if the latest polls leading up to tonight are any indication, it is looking like it could be a tight race between Carolyn Parrish, Dipika Damerla, and Alvin Tedjo. And we shouldn't count Stephen Dasko out either. He's still in the mix. Now, a couple of the polls published last week also showed close to a third of eligible voters were still undecided. So, Shannon, it could be a real nail-biter tonight. Now, the city held 4 days of advance voting over 2 weekends. Now, during those 4 days, almost 25,000 people cast their ballots. And we know voter turnout is historically low for municipal elections, and Mississauga is no exception. So the city says that number is actually quite encouraging. And speaking of the last election in 2022, voter turnout ended up being just 21.8%. That means less than a quarter of the 490,000 registered voters cast a ballot. That was the lowest turnout since 2003. Now, in this year's election, there are over 540,000 eligible voters, and we will be watching to see how many came out to cast their ballot. Now, the race for mayor is not the only contest I will be keeping an eye on tonight. Voters who live in Ward 5 will be electing a new city councillor. Ward 5 is the largest ward in Mississauga and encompasses the neighborhoods of Malton and Britannia Woods, and it's also home to Pearson Airport. That seat was left vacant after Carolyn Parrish stepped down in March to run for mayor. 15 candidates in total are vying to fill her seat. So I will have that result for you later in the show as well, Shannon.
Thanks, Kelda, keeping track of it all for us. We'll check in with you again soon. Well, now we want to head to Carolyn Parrish's election night party. Our Clara Pasika is standing by there live for us. Clara, tell us about the mood in the room right now.
You're clear? Coming behind you.
Okay. The crowd certainly got a lot bigger just right as polls were closing. And there's certainly some big anticipation and expectation in this room of a victory tonight. When people enter this space, there's actually a giant waterfall that has the candidate's face projected onto it. There's some pretty big signs behind me. So we had the chance to actually speak to Carolyn Parrish earlier today. She said she's feeling confident. She's feeling like things have gone according to plan, and she's expecting hundreds of people to show up tonight. Carolyn Parrish, the former Ward 5 councillor, also a Liberal MP. She's really been hoping that that name recognition and meeting with supporters can take her to the victory tonight. But who knows? Anything can happen on election night. So we'll be waiting on tenterhooks here at Carolyn Parrish's campaign, just like our viewers at home.
Thanks, Clara, covering it for us since day one, almost 2 months now that the election kicked off, the campaign kicked off. We want to head over now to the election night headquarters for Dipika Damerla. The CBC's Dale Manukduk is there. Hey, Dale, what's the latest where you're at?
Yeah, Shannon, supporters are just starting to trickle in now. There's about 10 to 15 that just came through the door. Some of them are playing pool here at the Crooked Q, some dressed in that bright yellow that has been a staple of Dipika Damerla's campaign. You can see the signs behind me, the makeshift stage. They are ready for a victory speech. And you see what's written on those signs: livable, affordable. That's what she's ran on. I spoke to one of her campaign advisors who's very confident in the campaign that she's run on those two promises. You also see that she's promising a new generation of experience. She's really campaigned on her experience as a city councillor dating back to 2018, but also, like Carolyn Parrish, her experience as an MPP, where she also served as the Minister for Seniors. So Dipika Damerla, her campaign is confident that they've done enough to edge ahead of her competitors in this campaign. We'll see how it all plays out in just a few moments.
Okay, thanks, Dale. We'll be checking back with you again soon. We're going to head over now to Alvin Tedjo's headquarters on Dundas Street West. That's where we find our Nav Nanwa. Nav, what's happening where you're at?
Well, Shannon, we are live here at Keenan's Irish Pub on Dundas Street West. Alvin Tedjo supporters are filing, and he is someone that is very well known in the community. He's been a city councillor since 2022, and his campaign has really been focused on affordability and building more homes. He's been a strong supporter of the Bloor Street Bike Lanes project, and some of his other campaign promises have been around things like freezing residential property tax until 2026, building more rentals with an emphasis on missing middle homes, as well as targeting the auto theft problem that's been impacting Mississauga by creating a municipal task force. Tedjo's campaign has been one that's been gaining a lot of momentum. He's been known as the progressive candidate, the young one, and over the last couple polls that we've seen, he's been tied at second place with Dipika Damerla behind Carolyn Parrish. So it'll be interesting to see as the night progresses where the results go from here. And yeah, we'll see what happens in just a few moments, Shannon.
Okay, thanks, Nav. We want to take you over now to Stephen Dasko's election night headquarters. He is at the Oasis Convention Centre. That's on Lakeshore East. The room's starting to fill up there. You can see they're still hanging a few signs. Dasko is a city councillor first elected in 2018 for Ward 1. Now that covers the southeastern part of the city, including Port Credit, where he lives. Now, Dasko campaigned on being a savvy businessman and strong fiscal manager before jumping into politics. He worked in tech, specifically around transportation. Building more transit is a big part of his platform. One of his pledges to build a subway line along Dundas, connecting Kipling subway station to the Hazel McCallion LRT. Did they get the sign straight? I think that's a signal that we're in for some fun tonight. We also have, joining me on the desk, two very smart people. We're happy to have you with us. David Valentin is the principal with Liaison Strategies. That's a public relations and polling firm. And we've also got Nokha Dakroub. She's a former Mississauga school trustee and ran for Mississauga City Council in 2022. We're going to talk about that for sure. You also host a special election show called Beyond the Ballot. That's on News Talk Saga 690. I got a chance to listen to every episode. More to talk about there. Thank you guys for being here with us tonight to help us kind of unpack it all.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
thank you.
Let's start with, what are you watching for? I know we're only 8 minutes in here, but David, what are you going to be watching for tonight?
For me, the big number is turnout, because we saw the advanced polls come in, and the advanced polls were healthy, but it was still a lower number than we saw in the last municipal election.
Right.
So is turnout going to be below 30%, above 30%? And some of the polling that my firm and that other firms did, they saw that Carolyn Parrish had a lead among those who say they voted in the advanced polls. Always important to remember that when we ask people if they voted or not, there's something called social desirability bias. Sometimes people tell us they voted, even when they didn't.
Okay.
So those numbers aren't fixed, but that being said, if she's going into this election with a lead, there'll need to be a lot of voters on election day to drown that out.
Right, yeah. Nokha, what about you? You live in Mississauga too, right? So this is your home city.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with what David said. I think turnout is a big, big thing. Mississauga is not known to have a high voter turnout in municipal elections, just like many other municipalities. The last election had 21% of the population come out to vote, which is pretty low, and that was a general election. So imagine in a by-election where people aren't really paying that much attention. Sure, there's a new mayor, or there will be a new mayor, so people may be a little bit more interested in that, but usually by-elections don't have the same level of turnout. So that's going to be a big thing. I would love to see a higher voter turnout. That might make a huge difference in the election results. I expect that Carolyn will do quite well, especially if it's a low turnout.
Yeah, I mean, you've done this. You've ran for city council. You've knocked on thousands of doors, I'm sure. Like, what is the challenge of translating that to people showing up, making the X on the ballot on the day of?
The biggest issue in Mississauga is there's a lot of people to communicate your message to and not a lot of ways to communicate to them. Because we don't have a whole lot of media. I mean, I'm grateful that we have so much media coverage for this race, but that's not usually the case. We're usually drowned out by all the excitement that's happening in Toronto. And whereas we're a big city, there's a lot of people, and people are busy. They have busy lives. They have other things to do. And you knock on doors, you meet them, they love you, and they want to come out to vote, and then they forget.
Yeah.
Right? Was the election today? Was it yesterday? They forgot to vote, and then you end up with a low voter turnout. The biggest thing, I think, in municipal politics is people feel a little bit disconnected from it.
Right.
Especially in Mississauga. It feels like it's something that, people just pay their property taxes and, they have a few services that they interact with, but they're not very aware of how much it impacts their lives, which is actually quite significant.
Yeah, for sure. And when you think about it, municipal politics, that can affect your daily life sometimes the most. Is the bus showing up on time? When I call 911, is somebody going to answer the call? Those kind of issues. I mean, I think what's interesting, too, about the race, it's such a stacked competition. Like, all of these folks have political chops, but there's also 20 names on the ballot. So if I'm a voter, and I'm looking, I really want to feel like I make an informed decision, because at provincial or federal politics, maybe I'd think, oh, I didn't have time to read, I'm going to check Liberal, NDP, or Conservative. You can't do that at the municipal level.
You can't, and we've seen also higher turnouts for provincial and federal elections. We were looking, my firm, at the voter turnout in the advanced polls, federally and provincially, and the numbers are like double, triple what we've seen municipally here. So when people feel like they know what kind of decision they can make, they do show up to vote. I think it's a little harder sometimes municipally because there's no political parties.
Yeah.
And so you really have to do some research to figure out, how did these people vote on the issues? How do these people want to vote on issues? And it's a little harder to trust because you don't have that party label attached to them.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's where it also gets even more complicated, because then you throw in name recognition into the picture, right? And candidates with highest name recognition tend to do very well in municipal elections because of that known or familiarity or the credibility that comes with that, right? So somebody like Carolyn Parrish will do, usually, I mean, we'll see what happens tonight, but usually would do significantly better than a newcomer, even if people like what they have to say, but just simply because they just don't know very much, right?
Yeah.
There's no political party, but I know this name, so I'm going to go vote for it.
Yeah.
And that's also why councillors are nearly impossible to unelect in Mississauga.
Right, so we're going to be watching for voter turnout. I do want to turn over to Dipika Damerla's headquarters now. Our Dale Manukduk is standing by with a guest. Hey, Dale.
Yeah, Shannon, Dipika Damerla isn't actually going to be here at this watch election party until the election is called. But in the interim, we do have one of her campaign advisors that is joining us, Aleem Kanji. Aleem, obviously, we're here on the big night. And what was the strategy going into this election?
Listen, Dipika's been really focused on building a big tent, building an inclusive city, and really focusing on a couple of key issues. One around livability of this city and continuing that livability and also affordability, making sure that taxes stay at or below the rate of inflation. We've seen some infrastructure issues. You know, this city is turning 50 years old, and as we move into the next half century, there are a ton of infrastructure issues. We've seen gridlock, we've seen traffic, and you know, this city, Mississauga, is starting to take its identity as the 6th largest city in the country, really growing up from what is a very, very big, small city to now a small, big city in Canadian terms.
You mentioned livability, you mentioned affordability, but you go to Dipika Damerla's website, and one of the things that actually stands out, that's in bold letters and in a different font color than everything else, is that she will cancel the removal of car lanes along Bloor Street. Why was that such a point of emphasis for the campaign?
Well, listen, her thinking is, and the whole strategy around this has been, that everyone deserves options. The plan in place right now at the City of Mississauga would actually remove bus lanes from the city, taking that away from active users. We want to maintain that. We want to see room for automobiles, room for bicycles on the boulevard, but also for buses. It's not one or the other. And it's an inclusive vision that she's building for the city, and it's an inclusive vision for Bloor Street that she's building.
And real quickly, how do you feel about your chance?
We're feeling great. Look at the momentum in this room. I know you're seeing the backdrop behind us, but we're feeling great. There's a lot of momentum, a lot of positivity, and we're going for a win tonight.
We got a lot of supporters in the room. Shannon, we'll send it back to you.
All right, thanks, Dale. We're going to head over to the newsroom next. Our Kelda Hewen is tracking results for us in the newsroom. Hey, Kelda, here you've got a first look at some numbers.
Yeah, I have some first numbers for you. The CBC Decision Desk has been watching these numbers closely, and we have some early numbers. Now, with 3% of the polls reporting, we do see that Carolyn Parrish at the moment is in the lead with 830 votes, and virtually in a tie in second place is Alvin Tedjo and Dipika Damerla. 613 votes for Tedjo, 612 votes for Dipika Damerla. In fourth, Stephen Dasco. And then you see the other results, Brian Crombie in sixth place with 48 votes in a very distant sixth. So the top four leading candidates, as we expected, they are the top four in election night. So leading into tonight, the polls showed that Carolyn Parrish did have a lead. She was still the front runner, but her lead has been dwindling in the last few weeks. And we saw Tedjo making gains. We saw Dipika Damerla making gains. And pretty much this is what we're seeing right now with these early results. But of course, we'll keep crunching these numbers, and I might have an update for you again very soon. Send it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Kelda. Yeah, when you look at the numbers, very close between Alvin and Dipika. We're going to go, though, to Clara Pasica. She's standing by at Carolyn Parrish's headquarters. Hey, Clara.
Hello. Certainly some big whoops and cheers went up when that CBC screen went up behind me, showing that Carolyn Parrish was in this very early lead. I'm here with someone who's very excited to see that results herself. This is Yasmin Youssef, and she is a volunteer on the Carolyn Parrish campaign. So how are you feeling right now?
Well, so excited and hopeful, but you know, the suspense. We can't take the suspense. We're waiting. So hopefully that goes well.
Okay, so what made you want to volunteer on this campaign?
I think because Carolyn Parrish has a very well-known track record, so we don't have to guess what she's about. We can actually go track back to all the issues that we're concerned about, and also mainly because she ran a very ethical campaign, while other opponents were busy trying to, you know, tarnish her reputation or spread rumors about her. She stuck to her course and talked to people and just remained ethical, and I think that says so much about the person.
And are you someone who typically gets involved in politics?
Yeah, this is my first time to be involved in a campaign like this, and it's just so much fun.
So what's the experience of being involved in this campaign been like?
I think it was, the volunteers were amazing. Everybody was so excited. We're learning with each other and from each other. Karen has been amazing, very close, open door policy. We can talk to her anytime. And I think she just, you know, she's a person who speaks her mind and is authentic. So I think she made it very easy for us. I remember specifically, I was handing out flyers on like one day. And one person told me, like, Karen already helped me many years ago, like 30 years ago, with a certain issue, so I'm certainly voting for her. So I think she made the job very easy for us.
Okay, so certainly one very enthusiastic volunteer here at the Carolyn Parrish campaign, hoping for a victory tonight.
Okay, thanks, Clara. We'll check back with you soon. We're going back to Kelda Hewen in the newsroom. The numbers are coming in fast and furious, Kelda.
The numbers are coming in so fast. Things can change very quickly. We now have 28% of the polls reporting, and right now it looks like it is a race between Carolyn Parrish and Alvin Tedjo. Carolyn is leading, still in front with just over 543 votes ahead of Tedjo, her closest rival. So at the moment, it does look like it is a race between Parrish and Tedjo. Of course, we will keep our eye on these numbers, and the tabulators, they are quick, Shannon, so things could change very quickly. Check back in soon.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be speaking to you shortly. I want to check in with you guys about the numbers. You're a numbers guy. Take us through what's going through your mind as you see that.
Well, it looks like it's a very close race, and we still have what we don't know is which wards are reporting. We don't know where in the city these votes are coming from. So it would be interesting to know, is this really coming from Ward 5, where Carolyn Parrish represented the area, or is it coming from other parts of the city, and has Alvin Tedjo's own ward already come in? So we don't know that information. It doesn't sound like we have to wait too long to get more numbers. That being said, those are not big numbers just yet. So the turnout right now, the cumulative number of votes, we don't know them just yet. The other interesting question, of course, is have the advance polls reported in? Because we are expecting for Carolyn Parrish to have a bit of a lead in the advance polls. So does this include that already, or are we still waiting for that to come in?
All right. Well, David, I hear Kelda's got more numbers to give us. Let's head back to Kelda Hewen in the newsroom.
Yeah, Shannon, things are happening so quickly. We have more results to show you now. 54% now of polls are reporting, and Carolyn Parrish, as you can see, now has quite a healthy lead with 17,021 votes, over 2,500 votes over her closest rival, which is Alvin Tedjo, still sitting in second, Dipika Damerla in third, Stephen Dasko in fourth. But right now, Carolyn Parrish, her lead is growing. Of course, we'll keep an eye on this, and we'll bring you more probably very soon.
Okay, thanks, Kelda. I feel like we should just keep a live feed of Kelda up in the corner. Nokha, you were talking about Carolyn Parrish earlier and just saying, you know, whether Ward 5 has been counted or not, her home ward, she is just well known right across the board. She's got a long history, a very familiar name with a lot of folks.
Absolutely. She was the MP in one area of the city for Arundel, and then she was actually the councillor for Ward 6. Before she was a councillor for Ward 5, there was a bit of an issue between her and Hazel, and then Hazel wanted her to, you know, be defeated, and Ron Starr took over, and then she ended up running in Ward 5. So she's known across the city in many different areas, and for many, many, many years. And she was a member of Parliament. She was a very vocal member of Parliament. She's a very vocal member of council. So she's not someone who, you know, the average voter who pays attention to politics and actually comes out to vote, she's not someone that person wouldn't know.
Right. We're going to go to Nav Nanwa. He's standing by at Alvin Tedjo's campaign headquarters. Also a bit of an exciting night for Alvin, too. Certainly keeping up with the numbers, Nav.
Hey, Shannon. Yes, certainly. I'm joined now by Maddie Calcavera. She is the Director of Marketing and Communications for Alvin Tedjo's campaign. Maddie, you're keeping an eye on the numbers. How are you feeling about what you're seeing so far?
Well, I think it's confident. It shows that, you know, Mississauga was ready for a new type of leadership. I think Alvin had the energy and vision all throughout the campaign. We saw it in the debates. We saw it when he was door knocking. We saw it today when we were getting out to vote. And I think we had a great positive reception. And as the numbers have been rolling in, we've seen a very positive support. And I think hopefully those numbers continue throughout the night. But it's a great energy. There's a buzz in this room, and hopefully that continues as the night goes on.
What made you want to join his campaign?
I think that was it, his energy and his vision. I think that we are ready for a better future for Mississauga, and that's what Alvin stood for. He stood for affordability, building more housing, and just making the city a better place to live. And really, that's what drew me to the campaign. And also, as a young person myself, I think we are ready for new leadership in politics, and Alvin really represents that to me.
And as the night progresses, what are you going to be looking out for as the numbers keep rolling in?
I think we'll be looking out for, you know, we're seeing the numbers roll in. We're seeing the support. Obviously, Alvin and Carolyn, that's the race at the moment. It's very exciting to see that we had that momentum, and we knew it all along, and it's nice to see those numbers roll in and support that.
And that momentum really came over the last couple of weeks. What do you think contributed to that?
Well, you know, we were out there, we were talking to voters, hearing what everything needed to happen. We had a very strong comms game. We were making sure we're reaching people on different channels as well. And that's what we did throughout the campaign, and it was nice to see it near the end come to fruition.
Yeah, you can definitely sense a lot of excitement in the room. Thanks so much, Maddie. Back to you, Shannon.
Okay, thanks, Nav. We're going to head to Kelda in the newsroom now. She's got an update on Ward 5, which we've been watching to see.
Yeah, that's right. We're keeping an eye on the mayoral race, but also, as mentioned earlier, Ward 5, they're electing a new city councillor tonight, and I do have some early results for you. Natalie Hart, she is right now in the lead with 933 votes, as you can see, but it is a tight race, because look at that. Only 99 votes ahead of Danny Singh, who is in second with 834 votes. Now, going into tonight, Natalie Hart was seen as a frontrunner. She had the endorsement from former Mayor Bonnie Crombie, but as you can see here tonight, she has a little bit of competition from Danny Singh, so we'll see how this pans out. Again, 54% of polls reporting. For now, we'll send it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Kelda. I want to pick up on Alvin Tedjo because, yes, when we started this race, he was sort of seen at the back of the pack, but really is making ground tonight. We heard he's bringing that youthful energy, a fresh voice to the city. A lot of that support is young people. So do they show up on election day?
Well, historically, not in the same numbers as seniors, even though sometimes young people in different cities can be a bigger share of the population. So it's always an interesting challenge when a candidate has youth support because you wonder, are they actually going to go? And it may be that part of the momentum today is that you got a significant number of those people to actually show up. I will also just say briefly, if we're seeing 50% of the vote for the council race, that should mean only about 50% of the ward results for the mayoral race are also in.
Okay.
So that does sound like we have still some Carolyn Parrish home votes to count. So we'll see how that goes. But I think for Alvin, it's been quite a successful story. And certainly in the polling, he started off in third place, and now he's finishing a strong second. So that's quite an improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. Nokha, when you think of Alvin Tedjo and you had a chance to interview him on your podcast, what were your impressions? What do you make of the campaign he's run?
I think he's done a phenomenal job. He's run a fantastic campaign. And like you said, he started off at the back of the pack, and now he's finishing a strong second, which was really unexpected. It really resonated his campaign with residents, and I think we're seeing that today. Perhaps not enough to be able to beat somebody with such strong name recognition as Carolyn, but he did put out a lot of really good policies. And his plan to improve transportation is quite good. He was the leading voice on housing issues and how to solve the housing crisis for Mississauga. And he also had something that would be very attractive to seniors. He wants to freeze taxes for 2 years, and that's a very, very popular thing in Mississauga, a city that has consistently seen higher property taxes year after year. So that's something that might also be helping him.
Yeah, we saw him run for the Ontario Liberals. Like, he is really starting to build a profile, you could argue, getting his name out there.
And he'll still be on council, right?
That's right.
Whether Dipika or Alvin decide, whether it doesn't work out for them tonight, they're still headed right back to City Hall. And Stephen Dasco as well. Carolyn Parrish, of course, did resign her seat. If she's not successful tonight, she will not be returning to City Hall. That's why we're having the by-election in Ward 5.
Yes.
But, Alvin really did put these policies out there, and now he'll still be able to propose them as a city councilor, even if he's not successful. The mayor, of course, will have strong mayor powers, but will be just one vote on city council.
And it's a by-election, so what have we got, 2 years?
That's right.
We'll be back sitting around the table again, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. It's going to be a 2-year term, although Carolyn has recently started saying that she might be there for up to 6 years, which might mean she might run again for another term. And in Mississauga, it's very hard to beat an incumbent mayor, so...
I was speaking to a resident who says Mississauga doesn't like change, right?
No, it does not.
Yeah, and when you think about that, we were speaking earlier about sort of the Hazel McCallion effect. You see all these candidates, they've got a photo with Hazel on their website. She was, of course, Hurricane Hazel, such a well-known personality. And even our reporters on the ground speaking to folks are still talking about Hazel. Some person said, I wish Hazel was still with us and still running. I mean, she's had an impact on the election.
And we've got 2 family connections, of course, because Peter McCallion was in the race to replace Bonnie Crombie for some time, and then dropped out to endorse Carolyn Parrish.
Right.
And meanwhile, we had Hazel's granddaughter, who was working on the Alvin Tedjo campaign and endorsed Alvin. So 2 family connections that have had an impact on the race.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you make of the Hazel effect?
The Hazel effect has been major in Mississauga. You can argue that she's built this entire city, and her legacy is still there. This is the first election where Hazel isn't endorsing anyone. So this is the first election where, nobody's endorsing anyone. Well, I mean, people are endorsing different people, but I mean, there isn't a retiring mayor that's deciding who or endorsing who the next mayor is going to be. Remember, Bonnie Crombie was endorsed by Hazel.
Right.
And Bonnie decided not to endorse.
Interesting.
So it's really interesting that Mississaugans are making up their own minds for, the first time in a very long time. This is a city where endorsements matter, and endorsements are are usually a part of the picture, even in council races. I'm not a big fan of that, but this is not the case this time.
Yeah.
People are making up their own minds.
Right. And it does look like Bonnie Crombie's endorsement in the Ward 5 by-election is having a positive effect for the person she's endorsed.
Yeah.
Because we do see a small, but still a lead for Natalie Hart.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to turn to Kelda now. She's in the newsroom. She's got some more numbers for us. Hey, Kelda.
Yeah, Shannon, we now have 71% of the polls reporting. The numbers are coming in fast, as they have been. And Carolyn Parrish has now extended her lead. She's now at 26,702 votes. She's extended her lead over her closest rival, Alvin Tedjo, who remains in second, Dipika Damerla in third, and Stephen Dasko in fourth. And we don't want to make any projections yet. The CBC Decision Desk doesn't want to make any projections yet because we want to make sure that we have a clearer picture of where these votes are coming from. We want to make sure that they're not all coming from one area. So we are keeping a very close eye on this race, on these numbers. But at the moment, Shannon, it does look like it might be a good night for Carolyn Parrish. I'll send it back to you for now.
Okay, thanks, Kelda. You know what's one thing we haven't talked about yet that was pretty interesting during the campaign is Carolyn Parrish declining to do debates. She did one, then she put out a statement saying for her personal safety, she had received some threats. She was going to stay out of the debate realm. So there was questions, is this going to hurt her? Is this going to help her? What do you think, given the numbers we're seeing now?
I'll let you go ahead.
Well, I'll just say, listen, at the beginning of the race, Carolyn was leading by 20 percentage points. So she's certainly doing very well tonight, and it looks like she could be very successful tonight. But there is a difference between winning by 3,000 votes or winning by 10,000 votes.
Right.
I do think the decision ultimately hurt her because we still saw these forums go through, and instead of her being at the table, what we instead had was empty podiums, empty chairs, and the other candidates took their time to attack her, even if she wasn't there.
Right.
And there was no one to rebut any of those messages. That being said, that first debate she did was a bit rough, and there was some controversy that emerged from that. So, maybe she did herself a favor by skipping the other forums.
Yeah. Nokha, your thoughts?
So I agree. I think she started off the race on a very, very strong note. And that support has dwindled. She's still doing quite well. So I guess the decision wasn't that bad. She was still able to withstand some of that. But the reality is also, I wonder if the fact that this race has received so much media attention, it's given other people the opportunity to pitch their message to voters that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And her not being at the debates also cost her the opportunity to be able to stand there and say, I have just as strong as a message that Alvin does or Dipika does, and also be able to respond. The interesting thing about all of this is that Carolyn is not the candidate you don't want at a debate. The first debate didn't go so well. There were some missteps, but she's a really strong person on her feet. Like she's not somebody you'd worry about at a debate. She'd be able to respond to attacks. She'd be able to, but I think a big part of it is she was the front runner. The front runner is always going to get attacked consistently, and she was going to become the center of that. And they knew that. Now, probably would have been better to show up at the debates, but clearly it seems to have worked out well.
Yeah, we're going to turn to Ward 5 now. Kelda has an update for us for some numbers from that race.
Yeah, Shannon, we have an update on the race in Ward 5, and we showed you earlier that Natalie Hart and Danny Singh, they were pretty close. But right now, Natalie Hart has extended her lead. She now has a lead of 452 votes over Danny Singh, so it looks like it could be a good night for Natalie. Again, she's the candidate who was endorsed by Bonnie Crombie. She is the president of the Malton BIA. So we will also be watching this race very closely as we watch those mayoral numbers come in to see who takes this seat. Of course, left vacant by Carolyn Parrish, who resigned back in March to run for mayor. Send it back to you.
Hey, thanks, Kelda. We're going to head to Nav Nanwa. He's standing by at Alvin Tedjo's headquarters, and he's got a guest with him.
Hey, Shannon. Yes, I have Alvin Tedjo's campaign co-chair joining me right now, Liz Mendez. Liz, thank you so much for making time for us. The numbers are trickling in. How are you feeling about what you're seeing?
We're feeling excited. It's such an exciting day. We spent the last couple of months talking about Alvin's message at the doors, and it really resonated. And today, people were excited to go vote for him. So we're really excited to see the results coming in.
It was quite the interesting campaign because at first, Alvin was trailing in the polls, and then lately he was coming in at second place. What do you think contributed to that turnaround?
I think people started to pay attention to the race, and they started looking at his platform, and it resonated with them. I think they're looking for what's next in Mississauga, what's the next 50 years look like, and I think they realized that Alvin had the plan for that. He actually had a thoughtful plan that resonated with the voters of Mississauga.
Why was it important for you to support Alvin Tedjo?
Alvin's such a great guy. He has such a good heart, and he really cares about people, and he really gets the issues. He knows that affordability is the most important issue for families. I have a young family. I have a 6-year-old daughter and an 18-month-old daughter, and the things he was speaking with resonate with me, and they resonate with other families in Mississauga who are really looking for someone who can work with them and actually want to do things that help them.
Well, Liz, the results are still coming in, so I'm sure you and the team will be keeping a close eye on them as they roll in. Thank you so much for joining us. Shannon, back to you in the newsroom.
Okay, thanks, Nav. Somebody we haven't chatted too much about is Dipika Damerla. She positioned herself throughout the campaign as, second to Carolyn Parrish, and we are seeing her numbers a bit lower down. What do you make of her performance tonight so far at the polls?
Well, this has to be disappointing for her because I think she thought she was second place. And she was for a very long time. It's really been only in the last few weeks that Alvin Tedjo's campaign has had more momentum. And I think that's come mainly at a cost of Dipika Damerla, who also saw in the last poll her support go down.
Yeah.
And it's hard to reverse trends once they start. I think if the race had gone on for another week or 2 or 3, we could see a different result than the one we're seeing tonight. But of course, luckily for Carolyn Parrish, it didn't go for another month or so. It's the election then will be over, and it has all the votes have already been cast.
Yeah. And I feel like we're getting close. It's 8:36. Polls have been closed for about 36 minutes. Again, on your podcast, you had a chance to interview Dipika. And what are your impressions of her campaign?
I think she did really well. She talked about managing the growth. She talked about, the fact that Mississauga has no choice but to build and to address the housing crisis. But, we have to do that in a way that's sustainable, that, isn't going to cause too much congestion. She picked a couple of fights that, weren't necessarily the best way to go. The bike lanes on Bloor Street, that cost her that probably cost her some votes. Thing is, bike lanes are interesting because in Mississauga, they're not very utilized, but people still want them, and there is still a support base for that. So once you take a harsh stance on something like that, it might upset a lot of people, and enough people to change course. The other thing is Dipika is well known in Mississauga, but she's not very well known as a city councillor. She's been a city councillor for a while now, but she's more known as her previous portfolio, which was a Liberal MPP and a cabinet minister. It's a little bit hard to position yourself as the only person who can beat this other person when people aren't really looking to beat that person.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. We're gonna go to the newsroom now. Kelda has an update with some numbers for us. Hey, Kelda.
Hi, Shannon. Yeah, I have another update for you in the mayoral race. 75% of polls have now been reported. So we're getting close. We're getting close. 3/4 of the votes have been counted. And as you can see, Carolyn Parrish has extended her lead even more. She is now at 29,770 votes. That is over 4,000 votes over Alvin Tedjo, who remains in second place, Dipika Damerla in third, Stephen Dasko in fourth. Those remain unchanged. So Carolyn Parrish again extending her lead. Shannon, it really is looking like it might be her night.
Okay, well, let's head straight to her headquarters. That's where our Clara Pasica is standing by. Hey, Clara, how are you?
Hello, I'm here with Nick Dominelli. He's a former staffer to Carolyn Parrish when she was a councillor. How are you feeling tonight, Nick?
Oh, we're feeling excited. very excited about the results and the campaign. Carolyn ran a really strong, positive campaign built on years of hard work, and I think the residents of Mississauga have seen her experience stand out.
Okay, so she is leading by several thousand votes at this point. What do you think is going to happen?
We'll continue to watch those. We're excited, and we hope to see Carolyn get over the top and bring this home.
So why do you think she's done so well so far this night? I mean, you're someone who knows her very well. What about her do you think has led to this victory so far?
It's been the work she's done over the years. It's not just on this campaign. It's built a career of hard work, and that shows. The residents have been so excited, so welcoming. Carolyn's just been worked so hard throughout the years. It just shows today in the results we're seeing.
And what do you think about her makes her different in her approach to campaigning?
Oh, the one thing about Carolyn, she's straightforward, extremely positive, and continued to knock those doors and talk about the positive message, the great city that we live in, and the great vision she has for continuing to build this great city that we have.
Is there any moment volunteering on the campaign that stood out to you?
Just the overwhelming amount of people that opened their doors and opened their arms to Carolyn and knew her from all those years of hard work.
Okay. Well, that was Nick Dominelli. He's a former staffer to Carolyn Parrish. Certainly feeling excited about these numbers in this room. Every time that those go up on the screen, people do yell quite a big amount of whoops and cheers here in this room, feeling the anticipation and the high hopes that it'll be a victory for Carolyn Parrish tonight here.
Thanks, Clara. Yes, she certainly has a lot of fans in her ward of Malton. She has made a big difference in her community. And I wanted to pick up again because we talked about her declining debates, but she said she was meeting with community groups, going to mosques, going to churches, meeting people where they were at. Yes, a more controlled environment, but as you said, her network of support is huge, as we just heard there from that gentleman.
Yeah, absolutely. And she has. She's been working really hard. She's been out there talking to people, doing the coffee and meets and greets and all that.
I'm going to jump in. We have some breaking news for you. The CBC's decision desk has seen enough and are ready to make the call. There you have it, the moment we've all been waiting for. Carolyn Parrish will become the new mayor of Mississauga, making her only the third mayor in the last 4 decades. You know, this has to be such an exciting moment for her. 35 years she spent in office, from a school trustee to a Liberal MP and city councillor for the last 13 years. Reporters have been asking her lately, you know, Carolyn, why this job? Why now? And she says it's because she loves municipal politics, that serving the city she lives in and loves has been a huge honor for her. This is such an exciting moment. We're going to get right to Clara Pasica, who's standing by at Carolyn Parrish's headquarters.
Well, as you can hear, people have just heard the news. Carolyn Parrish seeing the results so high here. People are very excited. Huge whoops going up in the crowd. Now, I will note that the feed that people are seeing is just a little bit behind, so they haven't actually seen that we projected the winner, but just seeing that those numbers are as high as they are, looking as hopeful as they are, people are very excited. People are just starting, more people pouring into this room right now. Carolyn Parrish is not yet in the room, and neither is her core campaign team. They've actually been watching the results from just one room over. They've been watching these results come in. They say they're not ready to come in yet, but we're anticipating they will come in very, very soon. As you can see, people just streaming into this room behind me. There's lots of chatter. You know, it's really, it's like they're celebrating a wedding around here. You know, there's food, there's a buffet, there's signs, there's people hugging each other. Just so much excitement here in this room, and they actually are slightly behind that. They don't even know that we've projected the winner yet, and there's still this much excitement, so lots more to come here in this room. As we say, Carolyn Parrish has not yet entered the space, but we're anticipating her any moment now, and we'll be right with you when we do.
All right, thanks, Clara. We're trying to figure out what the delay is there. Clearly, they're a few minutes behind us, but we'll go back to you when that celebration begins. We want to head now to Kelda Hewen, who's been tracking the numbers for us all night. And Clara, take us through the result and the numbers.
Yeah, Shannon, let's take a look at the numbers. We now know that Carolyn Parrish, she has won with 30.4% of the votes. Now, that is less than a third of the vote, which isn't surprising given how many candidates there are, 20 in total. And she now has a 4.6 lead over her closest rival, Alvin Tedjo, who remains in second. Now, if that lead holds, that will be a smaller margin than when Hazel McCallion beat the incumbent back in 1978. So definitely a very tight race tonight, but it looks like, it's Carolyn Parrish, mayor-elect.
Okay, thank you. So, Nokha, you live in Mississauga. Your quick first initial reaction when you hear the news, because we're going to have to hop back to that party when they get the news themselves.
I'm not surprised. I was expecting this. I think most people in Mississauga would be expecting this. She's had a long track record in Mississauga. She has a long history with all of the diverse communities in Mississauga. No one doesn't know Carolyn.
Right.
And there are a lot of people who don't like Carolyn, but there's a lot of people who really, really like Carolyn and would walk through fire for her. So it's not surprising, and it's interesting to see after a very long career in politics that she gets to be the mayor of Mississauga.
Absolutely, a big moment for her. We're going to head back to Clara now. I understand the feed has caught up, so I hear them now. I think they've got the news.
It certainly has here in this room. People are on their feet. I'm just going to step back here and allow you to see this crowd. Just so much enthusiasm. Everyone on their feet, cell phones out, videos out. Just have not stopped clapping since we changed this projection screen up here. We're seeing people involved in the campaign more heavily are starting to enter the room. We've seen some of her higher profile endorsers. People are taking photos with each other. They're taking photos of the screen. There's just a lot more enthusiasm here. We don't see any sign of the candidate just yet. She might be waiting to come out. We know that she was watching it in a nearby room, but we're expecting her any moment now.
Okay, thanks, Clara. You know, in the room, too, are all the supporters and volunteers who work really hard, right? Knocking on doors isn't easy. Approaching people, that takes a lot. People have been just in go mode for months now. I want to talk about the numbers, because I know when you saw them come up on the screen, you were kind of going, oh, that doesn't look like very many people came out.
No, and turnout is definitely below 30% at this point. There's still some votes to count, but it will not hit 30%. It will not hit 28%. I think maybe at the top end we might hit 25, depending on whether or not the advance polls have been counted or not, because we do know 25,000 some people voted in advance. Now, that being said, we knew going into tonight, for Carolyn Parrish to lose, there needed to be high turnout, and there wasn't. So I think the main beneficiary right now is her campaign, and obviously her supporters did go out to vote.
Right. We're going to go over to Dipika Damerla's headquarters. She's giving a speech just this moment.
Put forward a vision for Mississauga that I'm proud of. A vision that said, yes, we'll keep taxes low, but in a responsible way. A vision that said, yes, we have to get tough on crime. And a vision that said, yes, we must build more housing, but we must manage the growth, because if you don't manage the growth, our city will become unlivable. It was a very good vision we put forward. But my ambition for Mississauga has always been more. It's always been more than just keeping taxes low, a safe neighborhood, building more homes and managing growth. My ambition for Mississauga has always been, I also wanted to build an inclusive Mississauga, a Mississauga where everybody feels like they belong, a Mississauga where you can come from anywhere in the world and get ahead. And that vision will continue. That goal will continue. I want to take a moment to congratulate Carolyn Parrish, who I think is going to be our new mayor. She's done a good job. Well done. Congratulations, Carolyn. I look forward to working with you. I also want to congratulate Alvin Tedjo and Stephen Dasco on outstanding campaigns, and I look forward to working with them. Finally, the most important people in my life are all here, in this room. My family, my mother, my partner Andrew, my daughter Sharmila, and all of you. All of you. Thank you so much. And here's the thing, we did something special. For many of you, this was really your first campaign. The first time you got involved, the first time you put your heart and soul. And I feel honored that you chose me as the person to get involved. I want to thank my campaign chair, David Mong. I want to thank my campaign manager, Tom Allison. I want to thank everybody else in the team. I don't want to start naming names because I know I will make some mistakes there, but every single one of you, you know who you are. And I will promise you this much. If you enjoyed yourself on this journey, there'll be more journeys. There'll be more campaigns. And we'll continue to fight the good fight. Thank you so much. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your passion.
You know, she really believes in the vision for Mississauga and its future. She gets to continue that work as a city councillor, but what a commitment to run for mayor. Like, you've done this before for school board trustee and for city councillor. Like, you have to be...
It's rough.
It's rough.
It's rough. It's really hard. Running municipal campaigns is much harder than provincial and federal campaigns because you don't have a party. Because, I mean, it's one thing to put your name on the ballot, but in order to do really well, it takes a lot of commitment, it takes a lot of work and a lot of courage and a lot of hours, and it's not easy. And of course, you don't always get the best result. Unfortunately, that's the case for Dipika tonight, but she'll still have a great career ahead of her. She's still going to be a city councillor. She'll get to work with the new mayor and council to bring her vision and their vision to Mississauga. The reality is, Mississauga has a set of challenges that need to be addressed, and they're all going to have to now work together in order to move the city forward.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to head to Kelda in the newsroom. She's got an update on Ward 5.
Yeah, Shannon, there is another race tonight that is for city councillor for Ward 5, and I do have some updated numbers for you. With 92% of the polls reporting, Natalie Hart is holding on to that lead with just over 3,000 votes. That's 585 votes over her closest rival, Danny Singh. So Natalie Hart holding on to that lead. Of course, we'll be keeping an eye on this race. We're getting closer. 92% of polls reporting.
Thanks, Kelda. I can see David shifting around when you look at those numbers there for Ward 5.
Well, it looks like it's a healthy lead at this point. And I'm not going to decide for the CBC election desk, but it looks like we'll get a result very, very soon. Only 8% left to report in. But it does also look like there was a healthy turnout from Ward 5, depending on what exactly is left to report. And it does look like Bonnie Crombie's endorsement made quite a difference. You don't know what Natalie Hart would have gotten without the endorsement, but it does reflect well on Bonnie Crombie that the candidate she supported has done very well at this point.
Right. We're going to head over to Carolyn Parrish's HQ. Clara Pasica is standing by with a very familiar face. Hey, Clara.
I am here with Nav Bhatia, the super fan for the Raptors, who also endorsed Carolyn Parrish early in this campaign. How are you feeling about this win?
I'm feeling very good about it. Congratulations to her. Congratulations to all the people who ran against her. And it was a good campaign, and this is good for Mississauga. And I'm going to tell Carolyn, the work starts now. Party is over in the next hour. The work starts now, and I think this is amazing for Mississauga.
Okay, so how does this win compare to a Raptors win?
This is a good win also because this is for my city, and our city needs a lot of help right now, and she's going to get it done.
So what made you want to endorse Carolyn in the first place?
Well, because she kept a commitment with me. She helped me to build some basketball courts in a very tough neighborhood in Mississauga in Malton, where the kids were hanging around the malls and all that. She got arranged 1.5 acre land from me on the corner of Dairy and Goreway, and she gave me to build the basketball, and we funded, and we built the best basketball courts in Canada, and now over hundreds of kids are enjoying those courts.
Okay, so you said the party's tonight, but the work starts soon. What's the first thing you want her to do?
Well, I wanted to just get to work and start working with the residential issues, the people are having tough time. There are a lot of other issues like the traffic, like the housing and all that, so she knows what she has to do, and I think with her experience and the commitment she has made, I know one thing: when she commits, she does it, she delivers it.
Okay. Do you have any big hopes for the next month? Anything you want her to do very first?
What do you mean,
For the candidate to take on first?
Well, no, let her do. She has the agenda, let her do. She's the mayor, let her do. She knows what she has to do. Leave her alone on that, and she will do what is good for the city of Mississauga. I know that, I assure you that.
Okay, so certainly one excited fan of both the Raptors and Carolyn Parrish here at Carolyn Parrish headquarters tonight.
Thanks, Clara. Yes, the work starts now. You heard it from Navbadia. We have heard from a lot of the candidates, but we wanted to hear from you too, the people who call Mississauga home. Throughout the campaign, we've had reporters on the ground talking with voters about the issues that matter most.
Taxes. More job opportunities need to be encouraged, and secondly, the housing crisis as well.
Transit in Mississauga right now, let's just say there's a lot of room for improvement.
More parks would be appreciated.
Cheaper housing.
Affordability, building more houses, developing certain areas that aren't already developed.
The security, people's safety.
Transparency and communication between the residents of Mississauga and the government.
Taxation, a little bit reduce the taxation for the next generation.
The number one issues here is the safety. There are a lot of theft going on.
Well, housing is for sure.
Housing crisis, it's very expensive to live here.
Freedom and equality.
Housing is a big issue. I have 3 children. I have no idea how they're going to afford housing.
As a UTM student, I can for sure say that public transport is something that needs to be worked on.
Like more events where there's tree planting and like community cleanup.
Affordable housing, especially for the younger generation.
Low housing prices. Yup.
The environment, how we can protect the environment, how can we develop a community which is self-sustainable for the future of the community.
Stop people from littering and making the environment really dirty.
So many issues there, but you heard time and time again, right? Housing, affordability, first day in the chair for Carolyn Parrish. What does she have to do? Concrete things that she can do, Nokha, to try to help this pressing issue in the city.
Well, I did get to interview Carolyn, and one of the things that she talked about is cutting the red tape at City Hall, in the planning department specifically, because that's what they've looked at, and they've recognized that this is something that's delaying housing and being able to build faster. So that's one thing that she's looking to work on. She supported the fourplex motion.
Right.
She has a pretty decent record on housing, and it's been a long-standing thing. But I think the biggest issue, how are we going to get faster housing built?
Mm-hmm.
And she's going to have to work with council on that and try to figure out what's going on with the planning department and how, what are things that they could do to make it easier for builders to build.
Work with city council and also the province and the federal government. That's the thing, right? It's not silos. Everybody has to work together. What do you think about her working with other levels of government?
Well, I think it's going to be a tough situation because the provincial government, of course, has its transit plan. She may want to add to that, she may want to subtract to it, but they've already reached some agreements. Same with the federal government that has already sort of decided how much funding it wants to give Mississauga. And Mississauga did lose out on some provincial funding recently. Yeah. And of course, I think she's going to want to get every single dollar that she can. All that being said, it's a new mayor, it's a new era for Mississauga, but it's the same old council with just 2 additions now.
Right.
One, she's returning, but in a new capacity as mayor. And then, of course, we've got Natalie Hart. Now, she'll have strong mayor powers, but council can overrule a strong mayor if enough of them decide they want to go a different direction.
Yeah, and I think you talked to her about that in that episode, right? And she didn't want to come right out and say she was going to use strong mayor powers. She sort of didn't dance around it, but she said, it would depend on the situation.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are saying the same thing. I think strong mayor powers have not necessarily become very popular. But there's a time to use them. Bonnie Crombie used strong mayor powers to make sure that the fourplex motion went through. And that was very well received because people wanted to see that done. But yeah, I mean, I don't think any of them during the campaign are going to come out and say, I don't think any candidate during the campaign is going to come out and say, oh, I'm going to use strong mayor powers. People don't like that.
Right, yeah.
So, we'll see. There may be times when she needs to do that. But to be honest, we do have progressive voices on council. You've got Joe Horneck, who's very progressive. Alvin is still there. You've got now Natalie. You've got newer generations that are coming in who are going to be interested in fixing these problems.
I will say, speaking of Natalie, Kelda is standing by in the newsroom. She's been tracking that race for us in Ward 5, and she's got an update.
Hi, Shannon. Yeah, with almost all the polls reporting, CBC's Decision Desk is now projecting Natalie Hart to become the city councillor for Ward 5. Now, at the beginning of the night, it looked like it might be a close race between Natalie Hart and Danny Singh, but Natalie kept pulling ahead, and she kept that lead. So enough for CBC to make that projection. Natalie Hart, councillor for the biggest ward in Mississauga, and this is the ward, this is a seat that was left vacant by Carolyn Parrish when she resigned to run for mayor, and Bonnie Crombie also held the seat of city councillor for Ward 5 before she became mayor.
Kelda, we were talking earlier about Bonnie Crombie throwing her support behind Natalie Hart, and we were saying, there's obviously strategy at play for the head of the Ontario Liberals to be saying, hey, vote for this person.
Well, and Natalie Hart did run for president of the Ontario Liberal Party. This is someone that Bonnie Crombie would know. And Bonnie, of course, a very well-known mayor and also very well-known in the area when she was a councillor. So I do think this was an interesting move for her to make, and obviously it's paid off quite well. And Natalie will be very happy too. So we're seeing the power of an endorsement in Mississauga politics.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's turn to the success of Alvin Tedjo next, because he did, I think, have a really strong finish there, energized a lot of folks. Why do you think he succeeded far beyond expectations, or what was it that propelled him so close?
I think having momentum is always the most important thing in these kind of races. And towards the end, we saw he was consistently increasing his numbers poll after poll after poll in ways that other candidates did not. And certainly in Carolyn's situation, we saw her losing some support near the end. I think if turnout had been higher, we could have a different situation on our hands, right? But turnout is what it is, and we all have to be comfortable with that. For Alvin, though, he had very clear policy positions, a tax freeze for 2 years, more transit, more bike lanes, more supports for people. And I think for very targeted communities, that sounds like a very good message, especially if you're in Mississauga right now, stressed about finances. He was talking about affordability. He was talking about building more housing. Now, the next mayor is still going to face some of the issues that all the mayors in Ontario are facing, relatively high interest rates, developers that are having trouble in sometimes coming up with the financing to build projects. So, even Alvin, if he had been elected, would have run into these challenges as well. That being said, he put that strong vision forward. He built that team of volunteers, and he's got a very, very good result tonight for it.
Yeah, and even if you just look at social media, he is really savvy on social media. And when you think of the shrinking media landscape in Mississauga, as you said, we have seen coverage in the Star, Globe and Mail, some debates. But the reality is people aren't getting the newspaper dropped on their front step anymore in Mississauga. It's online. So we did hear from a lot of residents saying it was just hard to get information during the campaign. So you got to turn to Instagram, X, that kind of thing. And Alvin's game on Instagram was strong.
Yeah, and in reality, most people are getting their information from X or Instagram these days. And that's completely fine. I think the reason why he did well is because people got to know him and they liked him. He's a likable guy.
Yes.
He's a likable guy who showed up with a real plan to address the real life problems. And they like that. So he started doing better in the polls. And when people see that, they're like, oh, maybe this guy might win. Maybe I should go vote for him because I thought he was a nice guy, but he's not going to win. So I was going to choose between Dipika and Carolyn. And now I could vote for the nice guy because he might actually win.
Right.
So that's kind of what goes into, the kind of thinking that sometimes goes into this.
Yeah, for sure. And you could say he's one to watch, right? He's run, as we mentioned, for the head of the Ontario Liberals. He's really building that brand. And he also has a very strong personal story. Like you said, he's a young guy, 3 kids, parents who are seniors. He really shares a lot of that I think is what really energized people.
And I think when people remember the election, they're going to remember Carolyn won, and they're going to remember that Alvin came from behind to come to second.
Yes.
The story, of course, for Dipika is a little more negative, that she was in second and she fell to third. And Mr. Dasko, to be fair to him as well, he did not always do well in the polling and finished a decent 4th. So, but I do think Alvin's the one that's going to be remembered if you're not thinking about Carolyn Parrish in this election. It remains to be seen if she's going to want to run for re-election or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And there, like you said, there has been discussion over that. When you think about the fact that all of these folks are city councillors and they're going to go back to work and all work together, what do you think those dynamics are going to be like? Because Tedjo, Dipika, Stephen Dasko, they didn't give up their seats to run. So they're going right back to City Hall to continue their work. What do you think that's going to be like post-election?
So it takes time to heal. I think everybody will need some time to be able to move on from this. Losing an election is hard. I've been there. It's not fun. And it certainly takes time to heal from that. And, there's always politics and dynamics at city, especially Mississauga City Council. There's always stuff going on. So, will they always get along? No, because they don't always get along anyway. So even before this campaign, but it will take time to heal, and I'm sure they'll get back to work.
Yeah, and that being said, some of the candidates did say quite tough things about Carolyn Parrish during this campaign. And I do know that, I listened to Metro Morning, her interview, Carolyn's interview, I should say, and I do think she thought some of the criticism was unfair. So I think it will really be the onus on her to be the bigger person, now that she's the winner. To say, let's bury these hatchets and get to work and work collectively. But certainly throughout the debate process and throughout the election, they were quite tough on her.
They were. And when you think about it, at City Hall, right, you've got one vote. So you really have to work and play nice and get everybody on board.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Especially if you don't want to use strong mayor powers. So you really, really have to make friends with everybody and make things work. But hopefully, they're all able to really put the best interests of Mississauga at heart and really focus on where are we going to take the city moving forward.
Yeah, and their passion is undeniable, right? That's why everybody decided to put their name on the ballot, is because they believe so firmly in making the city better as it grows. We're going to go to Kelda. She's standing by in the newsroom, and you've been taking a look at the numbers around voter turnout.
That's right, Shannon. And we do have some numbers for you right now. With 98% of the votes counted, that's almost all the votes, based on our preliminary findings, the turnout for tonight's election is for mayor is 24.9%. So 24.9% of voters turned out to cast their ballot for mayor this time around. Let's compare that to 2022. Now, back in 2022, 21.5% of people came out to vote for mayor. So we did see a bit of a bump this year, a slight increase, probably not as much as the city had hoped, but a bit of an increase. And of course, 98% of the polls reporting, we do expect that number, 24.9%, to go up a little bit. But in the meantime, this is pretty good for a by-election.
Okay, thanks, Kelda. And we want to take you now straight to Alvin Tedjo's headquarters. He's standing by there with his 3 kids, and it appears to be his wife.
Oh my goodness, I can't thank you enough. I feel the love. I love this city. I love all of you so much. This is such an incredible team. Let's talk about where we started. 6 months ago, we were at 4% in the polls. We were at 4% of the polls, and we came this close. We came this close because of all of you. You guys are amazing. I love you guys so much. I need to thank our amazing team Emma, the best campaign manager in the country. Erica, Liz, Darren, Ryan, Maddie, Nick, Adam, Noah, Saad, Brooke, John. So many people made this campaign team the best in the city. Thank you all so much. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you to my colleagues who are all here tonight. So many of them came out, knocked on doors with us, and I just can't thank you enough. You've been so amazing. I have to thank my family. My mom, who's a senior, who's been knocking on doors, and my dad, who's still recovering from his injury last year, have been knocking on doors and dropping lit all the last 6 months. It's been amazing. My brother and sister, my wife, Rebecca, my beautiful kids who are all here right now, and we'll let you stay up late tonight. But most of all, thank you to the voters of Mississauga for coming up to vote, for voting for what they believe was the best vision for the future of this city. Thank you so much. So I just messaged our former councillor, Carolyn Parrish, to congratulate her on her win tonight, and I wish her well in her new role as mayor of Mississauga. She is now the leader of all of us, and it is in our interest to work together to make sure that we have the best city moving forward. She has spent her life fighting for her community, and I look forward to continuing to work with her on council. I also want to thank my colleagues in this race who ran, and everybody else, for an invigorating debate. Our democracy is better for it, and I thank them. And I thank everyone who put their name on a ballot, because we need more people like that. We need more people who want to make our community better, people who want to do the work and put forward these ideas. So I thank all of them for stepping up. We're at a difficult time in our city. The cost of living is one of the highest in the country. Too many of us can't afford housing. Crime is on the rise, and we don't have enough options to get around our city. But I have hope. I have so much hope and ambition for our city. I believe in our community. I believe that we can do better and that we deserve better. And that's why I'll continue to drive, that's what will continue to drive me as city councillor here in Ward 2. Despite our current challenges, Mississauga is still one of the best places in the world to live. And now that the race is over and Mississauga has chosen a mayor, it's time for all of us to come together starting tonight. I am so proud of the campaign that we ran, and I am so excited for our city, and I'm so excited about our future, because we've worked together and we've shown people that this city deserves a plan for the future, a vision for the future, and everyone who voted for us, I will continue fighting for you to get to that future. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good night. I love you. Thank you.
Win tonight, but you could say this is definitely a win for Alvin Tedjo's camp and his supporters. They worked really hard. We are turning, though, to Carolyn Parrish, who is making her way into the Mississauga Convention Centre. Plenty of celebrations there tonight. Getting lots of hugs from supporters, no doubt, who put in the kilometers, walking the sidewalks, knocking on doors, getting people out to vote today. This is such a big moment for Carolyn Parrish. As we said, she is a seasoned politician. She has held so many different offices. She is well known in the city of Mississauga, so many different community groups rallying around her, and all the incredible work she's done in the community, especially in Malton, Ward 5, where she recently held her seat but gave up. You could say it was a bit of a gamble, but it definitely paid off for her tonight. She's making her way to the podium. We're going to hear from her in just a few minutes. A very exciting moment for her indeed. As you watch these images, what goes through your mind?
Well, it's a familiar story. A former member of parliament, a former city councillor, who has been elected mayor in a by-election. And of course, I am describing Carolyn Parrish. I'm also describing Olivia Chow.
Sounds familiar.
Some parallels, because we saw the turnout went up in Toronto as well in their by-election. So it's an interesting story, but now we have to see how the rest of this turns out.
Right, and I know you guys are going to be watching for that.
Yeah, for sure. I've known Carolyn for a long time. I've known all of them for a long time as a school board trustee and a Mississauga resident. And it's really interesting to see that. It's a new chapter for Mississauga. Where we go from here will depend on how well this group of people works together and sets a new vision and figures out ways to meet the challenges of the future, and they are very big challenges.
They are big challenges. There are certainly high hopes, a lot of pressure, a lot of pressing critical issues, and a lot of eyes, right? People will be invested and wanting to see, okay, it's time to deliver the promises that you made on the campaign trail. I think I see that she's making her way up to the stage, getting ready to give a speech, or perhaps that's somebody from her campaign there.
He's a former councillor.
Thank you. That's why it's handy to have Nokha here. She knows all the players.
It's George Carlson.
Okay, yes. As we said, she's had so many supporters come out for her tonight, really rallying people behind her to get to this spot, the mayor's chair. Even though she's been at the federal government, she said it was this job that she was going after.
Well, and the name recognition is helpful, but she built a strong campaign team, and you're seeing them there in the room. And those people rallied together, they knocked on doors, they dropped the leaflets, they made the phone calls, and then today they got people to actually show up and vote. And you can't build that strong group of volunteers without a strong manager, a strong campaign team. And it's clearly she had all those pieces in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's speaking now, so let's listen in.
I am actually going to read a speech, which I normally don't do, but they're a little afraid I'm going to burst into tears or do something foolish. So I am tightly scripted. Good evening, Mississauga. Today we celebrate not just a victory at the polls, but a victory for the future of our city. I am honored and grateful to stand before you as your newly elected mayor of Mississauga. First and foremost, I want to thank the citizens of Mississauga for placing their trust in me. And your voices have been heard, and together we will build a brighter, more inclusive future for our city. We ran a very positive campaign, honest and truly multicultural campaign. Every different ethnic group in our city was on my campaign. To my dedicated campaign team, volunteers and supporters, thank you for your tireless efforts, unwavering dedication, and boundless energy. This victory is your victory. To my wonderful family up here in various stages of athletic garb, I thank them for their patience. Throughout this campaign, I have emphasized the importance of transparency and community engagement. As your mayor, I pledge to maintain an open and honest dialogue with all residents. We will create more opportunities for public participation and ensure that every voice is heard in our decision-making process, particularly at budget time. Mississauga, nobody claps for budget. Mississauga is a city on the rise, and with growth comes responsibility. We will prioritize sustainable development. I'm not going to read all this. No, it's way too much. I just want to tell you a very important thing. The region is going to be stronger now because you're going to have 3 mayors that actually get along. And we will be formidable when we go to Queen's Park or to Ottawa to tell them we need our fair share of funding here in here. As you all know, I can be quite charming. And you also know I can be quite forceful. We're going to mix charm and force, and we're going to take over the world. I I really want to thank every single person in this room. Nobody here didn't work. Everybody worked. Everybody called. Ahmad Atia, I love you. I want to thank everybody who's here. I can't start or we'll never get out of this part of the party. And I want you all to enjoy yourselves. I want you to understand how much I appreciate what you've all done. And I will never forget this moment. And I made it without crying. Thank you very much. Now let's relax and enjoy ourselves.
Certainly time for her to enjoy the moment. She said she'd stick to script, but then in typical Carolyn fashion, you saw her take the glasses off. That's the Carolyn Parrish everybody knows, self-described straight shooter. She's going to tell you how it is. And I think what you heard from her there is like she is a fighter, and she's going to fight for Mississauga. Your sort of final thoughts on Carolyn Parrish's win tonight?
Well, she spoke from the heart, and I thought, that authenticity is 35 years in the making, right? And now she's got a fight on her hands. She's got to go to Queen's Park, she's got to go to Parliament Hill, and get us what she says is get the fair funding for the city.
Right.
And also, not just for the city, but also for the region of Peel. Because, of course, Doug Ford talked about dissolving it, and he reversed his mind on that. He changed his mind. So now she has to fight for the region and for the city, and we know from her platform she wants to raise property taxes a little bit. She wants to have a more inclusive budget process. Let's see how that plays out.
Yeah. Nokha, your final thoughts tonight?
You saw Carolyn. That's Carolyn being herself. She was supposed to read a speech, and she thought she didn't need to do that. She wanted to speak from the heart, so she did that. It's great. She's going to have a lot of work to do. And she's got 2 years. Maybe more if she decides to run again, but 2 years is a very short period of time to start really getting the city back on track and on the way that it needs to be.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to head to Kelda Hewen in the newsroom now. She's been tracking the results for us. Kelda, some final thoughts from your part of the building?
Yeah, Shannon, well, right now with 98% of the polls reporting, I can tell you that Carolyn Parrish is in the lead by about 8,000 votes. So that's about 6 percentage points ahead of her closest rival, Alvin Tedjo. Still one of the closest races the city has ever seen. Also, more people came to vote, as I mentioned earlier, came to vote for mayor in this election than the last election in 2022. And just a fun little tidbit, we know Carolyn Parrish, she stepped down as councillor for Ward 5, which includes the community of Malton. We know Bonnie Crombie also was councillor of Ward 5 before she became mayor. So there is a little saying in that community that Malton makes mayors. So definitely a strong case for that tonight, Shannon.
Thanks, Kelda, keeping tabs on all the numbers for us. What an incredible night. Carolyn Parrish, as we said, is moving into the mayor's chair. We know she has her work cut out for her. Housing, crime, transit expansion. This year the city turns 50. Many have such big hopes for this next chapter. We asked people in the city what they love most about their home. Nokha, before we get to the tape, we want to hear from you. You love Mississauga. What is it that just really fills you up?
I love Mississauga. I would say my favorite thing about Mississauga is Port Credit. It's so beautiful, and I hope it continues to be beautiful. I love the water, so if you're ever in Mississauga, you've got to check out Port Credit and Streetsville, but Port Credit for sure.
Thanks so much. And let's turn to the tape now, hearing from people who live in Mississauga what they love most about Mississauga.
Mississauga is a place that welcomes everyone. Is the diversity. Like, you have all cultures out here. You have so much of food. You have so much of stuff around here that it's so beautiful.
Diversity. People coming from all over the place, from India, from China. I can see so many people coming from everywhere.
The netted community culture that we have, how inclusive we are, how well connected we are, how the community is supporting each other.
This is one of the best cities. Mississauga, it's all about culture, family. Community is wonderful. That's what it makes Mississauga rich.
Culture, family, community, you can bet that is For sure. That is it for us. I want to say thank you to our panelists, David and Nokha, for sharing all your expertise and insight and helping us unpack this big moment for the city. A big thanks to our reporters in the field and all of you for watching, joining us tonight, coming to our CBC debate and community listening sessions during this election. For more analysis and reaction, be sure to check out CBC News wherever you get your news, every platform, web, radio, and TV. We'll see you again soon.